Donald Trump once told us that one day we would get tired of winning, but my real question is, when will he get tired of the constant humiliations because they continue to pile up? So much so that his administration is now admitting to them on the issue that has Donald Trump losing his mind most in the recent days. That is his tariffs. Yes, the man who always chickens out just admitted how much of a chicken that he is. His plan is blowing up in his face. It is all going wrong, and we're going to get into it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, of course, there has been a lot of tariff news in the past 48 hours, but this breaking story about Donald Trump's deal with China that we just got an update on might be the worst news for him so far. Before we get into it, though, we need some context, and that starts with Carolyn Levitt's lies right here.
Thanks, Caroline. The president has been pretty firm on keeping these 145% tariffs in place on Chinese imports. Today, via Truth Social, he said that he'd be possibly open to lowering those to 80%. Why the change, and how did the president land on 80?
The president still remains with his position that he is not going to unilaterally bring down tariffs on China. We need to see concessions from them as well. And again, that's part of the reason that Secretary Bessent is going to talk to his Chinese counterparts this weekend to start those discussions in person. As for the 80% number, that was a number the president threw out there, and we'll see what happens this weekend. And always in the effort of transparency, I'm sure you'll hear directly from the Treasury Secretary or the president after those negotiations conclude. Jack.
Okay, Carolyn. So Donald Trump won't cave. He's not going to make a deal. He's not going to stop fighting. He's always going to be tough in the face of China because he's the salesman. He's the art of the deal guy, right? Well, Carolyn Levitt actually said that right before Donald Trump announced, as kind of always is the chain of events, that he was lowering tariffs on China. Now, what was China doing in response? Nothing. They were keeping theirs. But Carolyn Levitt comes out a couple of weeks ago and says, no, Donald Trump he's not going to back down. Then he immediately backs down because of course he does. He doesn't know what he's doing. The tariffs, they're on again, off again. They're on the EU. They're off the EU. Donald Trump, we know, always chickens out. And it's only going to continue to get worse. But before we get to that, I want to see what Hakeem Jeffries thinks of how Donald Trump is dealing with China, because it's very important.
Leader Jeffries, you referenced tariffs, so I'll allow this to be the last question. China took a tough stance on the threat of increased tariffs from the U.S. They managed to bring that threat down without any real concessions. If you are the Chinese, what have you learned about the art of the deal?
China punked the administration, and the administration backed down. That's no surprise because we've seen that happen over and over and over again.
So China, like Leader Jeffries says, is punking Trump. He is consistently giving up concessions to them while China does nothing. They're kind of just waiting for Donald Trump to continue to step on rakes, which seems like his favorite activity at this point, as all of his plans blow up in his face. And apparently China, for the longest time, has known about the taco trades. They know that Trump will always chicken out. He continues to make these carve-outs. And, as we're approaching the summer, Christmas is, just around the corner. This is a time when people are going to be buying. Donald Trump knows that those tariffs, they're really going to start to have an impact. And so what's he doing? He's lying, of course, about the deal that's oh so imminent with China. Just take a listen to what he had to say right here, which is the worst statement he could have possibly made before the real truth came out.
We signed a great deal with United Kingdom. We have numerous other deals that are ready to be signed. We've signed a deal with China. We have some really amazing deals, but the European Union, the sole purpose was really not to hurt us, but to take advantage of us, and we're not going to be taking
Mr. President.
So Trump is trying to tell us that he's got the deal. The deal is already done. We've done the deal with China. Now, let me remind you, the deal Donald Trump is claiming to have done with China is one in which he just lowers tariffs. They didn't actually agree to anything. There was no concession from the Chinese. Donald Trump hasn't brought any jobs back. He's just tanked the market. He's just created economic uncertainty. There is no deal. He didn't actually do anything. And is that the art of the deal? Screw things up, backtrack, try to get some publicity out of it? I don't know. But for the longest time, Donald Trump, as he always does, says the deal is 2 weeks away. It's 2 weeks away. It's 2 weeks away. Well, we just got some actual information that's not 2 weeks away, but might be indefinite, because Donald Trump and his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, just admitted what's actually happening with China and how they're losing the trade war.
And what about China, specifically China, and that obviously started in a different place? How can you characterize those talks now?
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks, and I believe we may at some point have a call between the president and party chair Xi.
So stalled. There was a time when the president thought that it was moving forward pretty significantly.
Again, I think that given the magnitude of the talks, given the complexity, that this is going to require both leaders to weigh in with each other. They have a very good relationship, and I am confident that the Chinese will come to the table when President Trump makes his preferences known.
All right, so let me go.
I feel like Bessent just desperately wants to say, we're losing. Trump has, as we know, chickened out. But of course he can't say that. So he says, as sheepishly as possible, they've kind of stalled a little bit. They might have stalled out a little bit, because of course they had. We started this trade war with Donald Trump lying about having talked to the Chinese. The Chinese embassy came out and said, yeah, that's not true. And Donald Trump is now lying about having a deal done, or a deal on the way, or a deal on the way that's done, or done that's on the way. Like, he just keeps lying about what the status of this trade deal is until Scott Bessent, and I think he kind of surprised Brett Baier, was just like, yeah, we don't know what's going on. Like, they're just admitting at this point that they are losing this trade war, that the tariffs have been a failure. And although they get turned on and off in court, and we don't really know what's going to happen next, the uncertainty is maybe the biggest issue. And the fact that a reporter now has Donald Trump furious over the fact that he's chickened out only makes it that much scarier. Our president is trying to control the economy unilaterally from the Oval Office with the most broken brain in America. And that should scare us all. And it only continues to get worse as we see this deal stall out. Scott Bessent admitting no one wants to deal, especially China, which is the biggest problem we could possibly be facing. And Nicole Wallace broke more of this down and how the tariffs have been an absolute disaster. And I want to check out that reporting right here.
To Trump's ego to know that there is something called a taco trade. Trump always chickens out. It is the story of his entire political rise.
I think that the risk that we were talking about before the break, which is there a danger in trying to goad or intentionally or unintentionally goading Trump? That's a real risk, and we know that because of his political career. So in 2011, Barack Obama gives this brilliant roast of Donald Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner after Trump had been going after him with the birther movement and so forth. And Barack Obama, in his cool way, just eviscerates him. And you see Donald Trump in the moment boiling over. And the reporting on it is that that was a really pivotal moment that galvanized him then to run for president. So he does detest being mocked, though he certainly likes mocking other people. So that risk is real. I think the fact that we are even having this conversation points to the bizarro world that we're in Trump 2 and in Trump 1, but particularly in Trump 2, where, we're thinking about, what if we make fun of Trump and then he'll respond in this way? And the chaos that will be unleashed could be really damaging for America's standing in the world and the American economy. The fact that we are having that conversation points to this weird environment in which, some people seem to be treating Trump like a senile uncle who needs to be appeased. And it's in the media, that's certainly not our job. Our job is to tell the truth as we see it. You see in Congress and the people around Trump, people continuing to try to placate him, trying to play to his worst instincts, to all of his instincts, in a way that's counterproductive, I think. And the question is when they will grow a spine in Congress, when some people might stand up to him, what would be the set of events that would trigger Congress behaving like grown-ups and not trying to just pledge fealty to this president?
Charlie, do you, on your bingo card, even even play that game anymore? I mean, is there a point where they respond to their constituents instead of Donald Trump's whims?
Not in the foreseeable future, because, I mean, you and I have been talking about this for 10 years right now. How many times have they had opportunities to do that? The political costs are simply too high for them. And frankly, look, waiting around for Republicans to show any sort of independence, I think, is a fool's errand. Now, on the edges, perhaps they will push back, here or there. But the whole issue of tariffs has been so illustrative because it will have such a tremendous impact on the economy, on their own constituents. They have the inherent power to block the tariffs. They are the Article 1 body in the Constitution, and yet they have surrendered. They have ceased functioning as a legislative body in many respects. But, going back to your question about the dangers of humiliating Donald Trump, you know how I feel about this. I mean, I wish, we could humiliate him on a daily basis. I wish that we could mock him. But Charlotte's absolutely right. This is the bizarro world that we're living in, where everybody is walking around on eggshells, afraid to anger or the senile uncle who has incredibly thin skin. And the thing about Donald Trump is he is, of course, a complete narcissist, but he has a very, very thin skin, and he's dangerous because he has the power and he has no restraint. And I think that's just something that kind of the reality that we have to deal with. Now, there are some people who say that, that's a counsel of defeatism, that, resistance is futile, that we can't do anything about it. But it is the reality that we're living in right now. And I think that to the extent that we can point out the absurdity of Donald Trump, the fact that we can, in fact, show that the emperor does have no clothes. And by the way, there's always a value to pointing out that the emperor is, in fact, buck naked when it is Donald Trump. I think we ought to take that risk.
Well, Robert, I guess I would push back a little bit on the premise that anyone humiliated Donald Trump other than Donald Trump. I mean, the truth of the number of times that he blinked is a data point that exists in public. We didn't no investigative journalist dug up the number of times Trump balked because of the poor reception to his tariffs. And they were announced, they were paused, they were raised, they were dropped. They were put back in, they were pulled off. 100 deals in 100 days, there were none. Now there's a framework for one with the UK and the beginning of talks in Switzerland with China. No framework, no deal.
This has been an absolute disaster, and it will only get worse as Donald Trump continues to cognitively decline. No one around him will say no. I'm still shocked that Scott Bessent admitted the fact that, yeah, China doesn't want a deal. Donald Trump can't secure any of the concessions he claimed he would or already has. This is just a disaster, and we got to keep calling it out. We're certainly going to be on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.